We'll get Amin Elhassan's take on this series. We'll get his thoughts on the Sixers rumors and some more NBA with Amin Elhassan here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. Welcome back, Amin. How are you?
How's it going?
We're doing well, and of course these NBA Finals I think have been very disappointing. I think everybody would agree with that. What has been the thing that stands out to you as the biggest surprise as to not only are that we're 2-0, the way we're at 2-0 with these margin of victories?
Well, I'll be honest with you. The thing that's the most surprising to me is Cleveland's insistence that they can play fast and they want to play fast, and they don't get that you're not going to beat the Warriors playing that way. You know, I've done previews for this final series on a lot of different platforms, on radio and on TV and podcasts, and all of them I talk about. If you want to beat the Warriors, you're not going to beat them at a beauty pageant. They're the prettiest ones around, and you're not going to be prettier than them. But you might beat them in arm wrestling. If you can make it into something ugly and dirty in the mud, maybe then you can beat them. But Cleveland is insisting that they're pretty fine too. But they're finding out, you're not really on that level.
Yeah, now that's a good analogy there, I mean, because the way that this has gone, it seems that, you know, Golden State still hasn't even played their best game, though. They haven't even put the prettiest girl on the podium yet, and they're still getting tens. It's been crazy to see that Golden State has been able to handle Cleveland with such ease while not playing their best. Well, maybe their top two players haven't played their best yet.
Right. I mean, I don't think those are mutually exclusive. Not mutually exclusive, the term I'm looking for. I don't think that's necessarily that the correlation is causation, so to speak, right? So
yeah.
The Warriors got Klay Thompson and Steph Curry haven't had a big impact on the box score, but they have a big impact on the game. Today on the jump with Rachel Nichols, I brought up a clip from 8 years ago when Steph Curry was still at Davidson. They played against Loyola, and the coach for Loyola decided that Steph Curry, this one he was leading the nation in scoring, decided that Steph Curry wasn't going to beat him. So he literally double-teamed him at all times, regardless whether he had the ball or not. Steph Curry finished 0 for 3 from the floor in that game, 0 points, and his team won by 30, right? So that's not because his teammates were awesome and they carried the load while he was just schlubbing it. They were able to score easily because you had two guys guarding him at every turn. They're basically playing, his teammates were playing 5-on, I guess it would be 5-on-3 on the back end, or actually 4-on-3 the entire game. So fast forward to these finals, they're double teaming Steph and they're double teaming Klay coming off these screens, and they're trying to switch everything. They can't. They're not smart enough to do it that way, and the Warriors are really smart and they'll execute and they'll exploit, and basically that's what's been happening.
I mean, Cleveland last year was up 2-0. They obviously just didn't have the firepower. They just felt, you know, they ran out of gas, and they lose that in 6. They added Kyrie Irving's a pretty good piece to add to say, hey, we didn't have him this year. Now we do. Love is kind of an enigma, and who knows if he'll play on Wednesday. Why hasn't the addition of Kyrie and Love meant a better Cleveland team this year?
Because you're ignoring the subtraction that they bring. The addition they bring is scoring. The subtraction they bring is they can't defend. So the thing that made Cleveland up 2-1 in the series last year, they're not doing that because the guys on the floor can't do that. Again, beauty pageant versus arm wrestling. Last year, they had a bunch of arm wrestlers out there. Deli and Tristan Thompson and Shump and Mozgov. This year, you have some pretty boys. And they're not as pretty as the Warriors. So that's the problem. It's the imagination of Cavs fans was, oh, man, if we had a little bit extra scoring, everything would change if Kyrie and Kevin were healthy.
Right.
The problem is that's not how it works. You don't get to you don't get to have your cake and eat it too. You don't get to keep all the defense and the grittiness and the blue collar and then just add 35 to 55 points on top of that. No, everything else suffers as a result, and that's what's been happening in the series.
I mean, with a team like Golden State, as pretty as they are, the 73, Curry, MVP, Thompson, Splash Brothers, all of that suggests offense. but is their defense severely underrated, and is that coming out in a series like this?
Absolutely. I mean, last year I think they had the number one overall defense. This year they quote-unquote flipped all the way down to number 5. This is an amazing defense. Points allowed aside, this is an amazing defense because what they do is so hard to do. We talk about how NBA coaches, for the most part, hate switching. They only switch in limited situations, end of a shot clock or end of a game, because we know that everyone's going to be locked in. But when you say we're going to switch for the entire game, it's hard because most guys don't have the IQ, nor do they have the mental discipline to know how to keep communicating and keep making the right decision as they're switching. The Warriors do, and not only that, they got a bunch of like-sized guys, so that not only are they smart enough to switch, but when they do switch, they can guard anybody, right? So Livingston, Harrison Barnes, Iguodala, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, all these guys are 6'6" to 6'8", or 6'6" to 6'7", and long. And so when you switch across every single time, and you can never beat them, you can never catch them sleeping, you can never get them on a backsteer or anything, because they talk, you do such an amazing job. Even when Curry is the one that gets switched on to, they are so smart, they can switch him off before you can get that guy the ball.
So are there switches or adjustments that Cleveland can make that you think that they can make for Wednesday night, or do you think it's a foregone conclusion about where the series is going?
Well, I mean, it's a foregone conclusion where the series is going, but, they may win one. It better be Game 3, because if they lose Game 3, then it's really over. Then I know my bosses over at the network won't be happy because no one's going to watch a Game 4 for a team that's been outclassed 3 games in a row.
No doubt about it. How do you think Lou's done in this series? There was a lot of credit that he was getting at some points, leading them through the playoffs as easily as they did. How has he fared on the sideline in the finals?
I would say in the finals, he hasn't been good. But, again, he's been very good. And if you take his regular season and then leading up into the first few rounds of the playoffs, he's a first-time coach, and he found something that was successful for him. And so it's hard to then turn around and say, yeah, that thing that worked for me, got me here, yeah, that's not going to work at all. But that's the case that he's finding himself in right now. And what Tyronn Lue is doing is he's leaning back on the thing that got him there without knowing that the thing that got him there is basically going to end his season.
Amin Elhassan, all right, I mean, the LeBron story is to me fascinating. If he loses, he'll be 2-5. We know that narrative. He's been there 6 straight times. How do you surmise at the end if you look at a guy who say, here is a guy who was maybe one of the greatest talents, and yet his teams rarely won when they got to the grandest stage. Is that a bad thing? Is that a knock on him?
No, because there's 2 things going on. One is he's clearly losing to better teams. Other than the series he lost to Dallas the first year in Miami, they've lost to a better team, and then many times a much better team each time of these losses, right? But then the other part of it is I kind of reject this notion that somehow if I go to the finals twice and win twice, but lose in the first, second, or third round every other year, I am somehow better than a guy who goes to the finals 7 times and loses 5 times, but never loses any early in the finals. How does that make him worse than everyone else? I don't get that one.
Yeah, no, I to me it's just this is going to be such a weird. I can't think of another guy who's on that level where constantly got to the greatest stage and constantly, more times than not, did not come out on top. Typically, when you have the best player over time, we've seen the best player typically in this sport always wins, except for in the instance of maybe the sport's greatest player.
I mean, I think when we look back, how many finals did Michael Jordan win where he was in the favorite, where he didn't have the better team? How many did Tim Duncan win where he didn't have the better team?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, most of these people that we call great talent, Kobe Bryant, I'll go down the list, Shaq, all of them, they're winning, but yeah, they're beating better teams. I mean, if he's the worst team, you know, LeBron is not on a bad team. This whole talk about he needs more help, or the Cavaliers, this is the worst supporting cast, or any of this trash that people are saying today because they got their ass handed to them. That's not his fault, and it's not their fault. They're playing the best team of all time. This is something we've been telling people all the season long. This team was 73 games, and they weren't even healthy most of it. At some point, people have to stop blaming the victim and realize there is a bigger, badder bully on the block, and they live in Oakland.
That's a great point, and a lot of passion on that one because you're right. I think people just don't understand that they're playing against a team that right now is historically great, and when it's all said and done, are going to win more games than any other team ever when you put the playoffs and the regular season together. I mean, I want to ask you a couple questions regarding, the Sixers here locally with these rumors out there. You know, you've been in the front office there. If you're looking at this potential deal with Noel going to Atlanta for Teague, what advice would you give Jerry the Colangelos?
Yeah. Well, Jerry's kind of drifting into the background now. It's Brian's show. But
yeah,
I like where his head is at in the sense that, for me personally, I've always thought Nerlens Noel is a flawed player. I think he's got some things that he does well that you can be excited about, and then he got some things that he doesn't do that well, and it's kind of you're limited. So the best bet is to trade him for something that can help you move forward, and I think Jeff Teague is a good young point guard who is under contract for another year at a very reasonable rate, allows you to go out there, and now if you add more talent to him, now you're going somewhere. Jeff Teague alone is not good enough. And he's got his own flaws, by the way. But at least he's shown that he can perform on a winning team and perform well in a playoff environment. And that's the thing that the Sixers have to do right now. It's all about moving the culture forward with players who have had some success and can set some expectations for the other young guys in the locker room that, that's how we're supposed to be doing things.
So you make that deal. You trade Noel for Teague.
It depends. Like, they're going to be other parts. It's not just going to be a straight up 1-for-1. But if that
well, it sounded like the Sixers were giving up more part. I haven't heard any more from the Hawks yet, so there could be more coming from them. But it sounded like the Sixers were going to throw more into the mix.
Here's the thing that you always got to remember: it's all about leverage, right? So, who has leverage in the situation? Is it the Sixers who lack it or who have it because they know Atlanta wants to get rid of Teague and make room for Schroeder, or is it the Hawks who have the leverage because they know the Sixers want to get better and not a lot of players want to go there, so their only avenue to acquire talent is by a trade? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Do you think, though, the Sixers, because of the amount of things that they have, I got to imagine their phone's probably ringing pretty consistently with Okafor, Noel, picks. Hey, you guys want to do – I would assume that they're getting a lot of calls. Do they have the leverage of, hey, we can listen to the phone ring all day because we got a lot of different offers coming in?
Yeah, it's glass half full, glass half empty, and that's what NBA GMs and NBA agents are really good at, is reading or trying to read whether you're panicking or not. Yes, on the one hand, they have all the assets in the world, and hey, we've been terrible anyway. So what's the rush for us? On the other hand, Brian Colangelo does not want to have another year that's been like the last 3 years. He wants to show that these assets that were accumulated can now be turned around and cashed in for stuff. And that was like Sam Hinkie's thing, is that he could not take the next step. He was good at, it's almost like the Jerry Seinfeld bit. Anyone could take the reservation, but it takes a special to hold the reservation. It's really the holding. And so Hinkie was great at accumulating assets, but it's all about like cashing those assets in, because just accumulating them isn't enough.
Amin, I know you got to run. I'll leave you with this. If you're in position with the number one pick, is it a no-brainer for you to take Simmons?
No, it's not. And not because I think Ingram is way better. It's because it's tough. I don't know if there's a lot of differentiation between those two players. One is an excellent passer as a big and a very unique talent, but not so great at scoring and definitely not good at shooting. The other, long, lean, great scorer, great shooter, but and an excellent defender, but does he make other players better? In a weird way, both of these guys represent the modern NBA, whether it's a playmaking big or a long, skinny guy on the perimeter who can shoot the living daylights out of it. But I don't know if one of them is clearly better than the other. And so the workouts, the interviews, the background checks, these are all going to be very, very important for the Philadelphia 76ers.
Amin Elhassan, everybody, at Amin ESPN on Twitter, and you can hear him talking NBA over all the platforms. And, of course, we appreciate the time. Thanks, Amin.
Thanks all, guys. The Jump tomorrow, 3:30 Eastern. Me, Michael Rappaport, and Byron Scott, and Rachel Nichols.
You know, I once went to the bathroom next to Michael Rappaport in the Atlantic City casino at a fight.
Did he ever stop talking?
It's a very awkward situation when you're having a conversation with a man at a urinal. Take care, pal.